Hi guys, welcome to episode 12 of Tiger Heart Chats. I've got a really good friend of mine up onto this episode. He's a fantastic music dude who I used to kind of bump into when I used to work in the music industry. Please welcome to the stage the CEO of Sari, Nikke Osterback.
Well, thank you very much, Sanj. Thank you for having me on the program. And it's been a few occasions we've come across each other's paths.
Absolutely.
So great to be here.
Great to have you here. Terve mitä kuuluu.
Hyvä kuuluu.
Those of you listening, that was a little bit of Finnish. Nikke is a native from Finland. Whereabouts in Finland were you from originally?
Yeah, well, I'm from a place called Jyvaskyla. So that's 3 hours north from Helsinki. And
right.
that's still considered central south, I would say. So
right.
But it's about like 100,000 people. But
wow.
But it's a big city in terms of Finland. So
whereabouts in London are you based now?
Our office is in Chelsea, so just on Lotts Road, so near Imperial Wharf, Fulham Broadway tubes,
nice.
All the ground. So all good.
There's going to be people that are listening to this podcast who don't know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I guess for me, I guess it's kind of, I started in the music business, and that is kind of the passion that I followed. And I studied music business originally before then doing an MA/MBA. But sort of like the past was to follow, I used to be an amateur musician, used to play in bands, produce music, and then I ended up working in the music business, and that's how I kind of ended up in London in the first place, and that's like I think 13 years ago, so I ended up working at Universal Music, and that was like a dream job, especially Island Records, and that was the first record company. Basically that I kind of appreciate and looked up to, and that was because I hope there's not going to be too much about music, because that's not really what I'm kind of doing so much these days. But anyway, so Island Records used to be that label that brought in international talent, and the likes of, for example, like U2 or Bob Marley, these kind of artists who truly became international. Yeah. So I always looked up to Island Records as like an international force of music, rather than being specific to a place or time so much. So that was my first job. I was there a year. Then I ended up at Atlantic Records. I was there for 5 years. So I was always like that was the time of like when digital marketing started, like the digital marketing 2.0, if you like. So for me, the first era of digital marketing and communications was a website and search advertising. And then after that, when I started 13 years ago, it was like the ground zero year for social media, and we were registering Facebook pages, and then we had a meeting. Someone said, has anyone heard about this thing called Twitter? And then, off we went, we registered Twitter channels. So it was that time, and that's kind of the phase where I think that's kind of matured now. So those kind of last 13 or 12 years, I think, were that second phase of kind of formed by social media. And now we're coming to this kind of questioning some of the choices, and we're questioning if we've gone the right way with digital communications. So it's quite fascinating. And then what's happened next is I was working at Atlantic Records. I was the lead digital marketeer, working with like Bruno Mars and Ed Sheeran, Paolo Nutini, like lots of really cool things. But for me, I couldn't really see that there was a path forward in that environment of a big company. Yeah. Because whoever's worked in a big company environment, there is an element of you have to work for your career rather than work and do the best job. So you kind of, and for me, I think it felt like with the ideas that I had, that I should really be outside of a big organization and can try to push the boundaries and try to make the ends meet on my own. So.
Right.
So yeah, and then that's the inception to Sari Limited, which means an island, and it goes for island records really actually originally.
Wow.
So,
okay.
So there is a parallel and kind of trying to remember kind of who you are and kind of coming from the arts and all of that. So yeah, and for Sari, so what do we do? So we're a 360 digital consultancy where we work with mainly B2B companies, but also consumer brands to look at the strategies, how to deliver digital communications. And to me now, like the whole paradigm of digital marketing is really about communications. And that came to be when one of my former bosses from at Mission Media said that the ex-owner of the company said that, she was complaining about someone who had done their job or something. But the main message was like, we're in communications. And if we can't get this right, like what good are we?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuck. And I thought that, it's not really about, it's not about marketing or it's not about advertising or it's not about like any of that. It's about a message and you have an audience, you have your message, and then you track what you're trying to achieve, and that kind of also it goes to PR, it goes to everything, and I think now it's kind of fascinating to see how for example the previous last few elections in the UK or the whole kind of the America situation, you can kind of see where that sort of like PR methodology of delivering a message was taken to the individuals and kind of going direct to the end user with an idea of the idea could be something like, well, if you vote in these elections like that, we will give you, personal freedom from, like the EU or something. So it's quite fascinating now, like how all that's kind of matured, and also like how the big companies like Facebook are actually having to chase their own tail because like they made these great big machines and people populated these places. But then, now it's like, it's happening. So what are we going to do about it? So it's fascinating now because it's kind of that whole thing like where technology leads and people are almost like part of this great big experiment, and so it's been great kind of few years, and so with Sari, so what we do is I retain music clients, so there are high profile music projects that I do, but I'm kind of mainly focusing on working with brands, B2B companies a lot, especially to the Nordic markets, and it's kind of taking that approach of like what can digital communications do for your business. And if you're a B2B, if there's a brilliant idea, you can deploy all these tactics and platforms and whatnot with good budgeting. You can achieve things to any business. So it's fascinating. And what I love about my work is be constantly learning. So there's always like the variety of the different sectors I worked with, and the different types of campaigns. It's fascinating because you constantly kind of keep learning from whether it's working in aviation or fintech or like a charity project or a brand or anything. So that's fascinating. So at Sari we're kind of it's a consulting first, and then secondly, there's like the different agency disciplines that we deliver.
Yeah. So, how long has Sari been going for?
I think it's 2013 established.
Wow. Okay. So it's a while now.
Yeah, it's kind of it's come to a point where I can't pretend that I haven't been doing it for a while, and it's also come to a point where you can kind of look at the people who who stayed on their tracks, or you with the last 10 years, it's kind of easy to look at people where people have progressed, who have started their own companies, who haven't, who have done this or that, and it's interesting to see that I've genuinely done 7 years of this, and there's been different kind of bigger bulks of I spent a couple of years consulting on and off with a creative agency called Mission Media in Covent Garden, New York, but then outside of these kind of bigger things, there's all these different projects that have happened. So it's interesting because it must kind of, it stays with you. So all of the work stays with you, but then, from a very kind of basic day-to-day perspective, it's like the work stays similar in many ways. So you need more clever, you need better budgeting, you need more kind of cleverer ways of kind of putting campaigns together. But then at the same time, there's more competition all the time. A lot of the digital communications skills have become like household skills. So it depends, like, where are you selling? What are you selling? Music industry has been really interesting because really the whole kind of communications paradigm is moving always like to the artist. This started to happen already, I think, 3 years down the line to like social media really being relevant, like the whole thing of likes of Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift, like the ones who became these kind of mega stars of today were the ones who invested into that. So that's really fascinating, I think.
You and I have actually been working in this space a similar time and watching the evolution of human behavior over this period is so interesting. Just one of the things you highlighted before about questioning where social media is now. I remember when it first kind of hit, it was such a liberating thing to have around, because you could express yourself to a huge audience just with your computer, which was never even heard of before. And it felt so kind of satisfying. But now there is a completely different mindset to how social media allows you to democratize the things that you have around you, whether it's, with photography or music or film or whatever. So that's really interesting. Just with regards to this kind of shift that you've seen, particularly over the last 7 years with Sari, how has that affected what you are as a business when you're working with your clients?
That's a really good question. I think kind of the constant evolution, ironically, I suppose, it's like the Sari started originally to work with artists and small music businesses. So
Right.
I was consulting for artist managers, bigger management companies, and then artists direct. And the idea was that, the artist social media marketing, i.e. their brand marketing at the same time, very much, belongs to the artist and their core team, because everything you say and everything you do is part of like what your identity is. And I suppose in music and working with like personalities, you should talk more about like identity marketing rather than brand marketing, but kind of the similar thing. So the idea, the inception of Sari was to address that opportunity that now you have to do this yourself because you've been given these tools to be the master of your own audience. And that's what I did. And then the consulting was to bring the artist and the immediate team closer to the processes of doing good digital marketing and communications. But then at the same time, this has kind of become obvious to a degree in the last 7 years. So now it's like, yes, everyone knows you're meant to be like, there is a tone of voice. You have to have integrity, or you have to kind of foster the type of an image you wish to portray, whether you're a brand or product or whatever. But then, so then for my business, there's less and less kind of good work around that it has to do with like facilitating those group of channels, because you have to be working with a big brand to be able to bill properly for channel management and all that. So you have to kind of almost like for an agency, it becomes almost like a sales challenge, first of all, because with all the smaller companies, or especially like in entertainment, a lot of that work is usually at the lower level delivered by the person themselves. So you can't really kind of pitch for that work. But then, that's kind of the social media communication side. Similar things. What's interesting with digital advertising is what's happening is that there's especially like Gen Z and younger, so kind of the new working generation. There is the general kind of attitude is that for people being born, people who don't remember a time when the internet didn't exist, there is the idea that I can learn everything and anything because I've got the internet, and these are usually the counterparts that my company faces when I work with a business. So
Right.
so often you have like this kind of like, well, what is the service? What are you actually doing? And then what is the unique approach that you can bring forth? And what's changed? What's changed for me is like that there is a need for many of these companies who I'm targeting with a voice of reason, voice of experience, and someone who can look at a budget, who can look at the longer timeline, and who can tell the CEO or the board of directors that this is what digital marketing and communication should deliver to you. This is what you should be investing into this in the next 3 months to a year. So, and these are the questions. Often the CEOs, the business owners, they don't really get from someone who's basically onboarded to a business and said like, well, you're in charge of digital marketing now, so go and do it. And then because often the younger generations believe that there is this idea that, well, just because social media has always existed, it's something that's relevant. And whereas that's a very good question, is that am I meant to be investing into social media? Is that something that I really should be doing? Like having someone who does like channel management, creates 3 to 5 posts per week across 5 different channels. Is that really a good investment? Whereas like quite often now it becomes more about like, well, actually you need to invest less in the organic and you need to invest more into the paid for, but you need to do it the right way. So the balance kind of shifts, and I think balance with campaigns, but also time is money. So it's kind of shifting more from, well, actually, we don't want to be doing too much crazy stuff that doesn't deliver, but we need to be doing the right things, and it needs to be a mix of doing the right things, which is consulting / management, and then paid for. So it's really become a paid for arena. Kind of how do you deliver the message in many ways, but
Yep.
then you have to be kind of you have to know what you're saying. You have to put your best foot forward when people find you, and that's kind of the inbound SEO piece, if you like. So,
Yep.
so it's all kind of it's really fascinating because it keeps on changing.
Yeah.
And then going to your kind of 7 years is as long where it's quite easy to kind of draw up like which parts have become more relevant in the digital kind of marketing paradigm and which have become less relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also the kind of like retention of audiences has just kind of become like the number one thing with established brands. So it's like, okay, so you know, like a brand that started like let's say 10 years ago, a new consumer brand, they were like riding high on the kind of free engagement and awareness you could get through social media or organic social media, and grown through that and really benefited from that. Now it's more about like, okay, so we got to this point where we're at the right place at the right time. So we really benefited. We have a business, but then where do we go next?
Yeah.
So and it's really more about like thinking more mature. So like, you got the foothold in the market through digital means, but then how do you then kind of keep in the game when those companies who weren't really digi savvy, so to speak, are then, getting digit savvy finally. So for the competition, but it's tough for everyone.
At the end of the day, it's all about value. Whatever business you run is where is the value of your service, and how potential customer perceives that value, which is always a struggle. We as Tiger Heart have that issue because we're an innovation agency and we focus on emerging technologies. And a lot of the clients we work with sometimes don't understand how something so alien to what they're used to can benefit their business, and you have to kind of prove that to them. But what I love about it is just noticing how human behavior evolves around these changes, but two, about how to work with new things and create new formats or create new ways to engage with customers potentially. That I find exciting.
Yeah. And you guys do a lot of experiential activations. So that was really fascinating as part of the, like, for example, like looking at like red carpet events now 4 years ago. And that was really interesting, was like that was the time that I really believed that, this is the kind of like where digital was becoming part of everything you do in some shape or form. And it was really that kind of tipping point, I think, where
Totally. It's changed dramatically. I mean, when I was working for another tech company before, we used to design and develop and deploy innovative experiences at events, particularly at red carpet events. And the brand that would work with, usually be a luxury brand like a champagne business or a fashion brand. They just wanted to engage with people as they were coming into the event. And I remember some of the first installations we did, build an app that would run the system, and the user would log in using their Facebook. And now, whenever we work with brands in that space, we found that users don't want to give those details, which is fine, but it's just interesting how quickly social media became a kind of dirty domain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like social media has become like working at like Philip Morris in the mid 70s or something, I guess. Or I don't know, even 70s. I suppose it's like more late 80s, but it's
And it's interesting because some of the businesses we work with, they're having to struggle with those brick walls. But then yesterday, my wife and I went to a pub. So, it's COVID-19, things have changed, pubs are open now. We went to the pub for the first time to have a pint, and everything was done through QR code. So you turned up, you scanned a QR code, you filled in a little Google questionnaire just to say what your name is, where you're from, and, whether who you live with and stuff, so that, they know what's going on from a COVID point of view. And then when you sat down, there was like no menus. You just scanned a QR code and that took you to a page and there was a menu on there, really simple menu. But it was one of those things. I remember like pushing QR codes to some of our businesses about, a long time ago, and a lot of our clients just weren't into them. And now these types of technologies that we were kind of stirring in front of these businesses with their arms wide open, because they're actually allowing them to liberate their business, but also liberate the customers who are coming to see them.
Yeah, with QR codes, it's kind of like it took the phone manufacturers to adopt QR codes into their own tech, to allow them to become like these kind of scannable URLs. Because like we were just flying back from Finland last Sunday, and they had this like, you have to fill in this form to come back to the UK, like anyone. So like a government form. And then I was like, okay, well, I better do this. And then the QR code takes you straight to the web page, which is something we then struggled when we were like doing activations for like Plan B at Atlantic Records, or like, trying to kind of, put QR codes to the front of people's minds. And the hurdle was always like, well, you need to download an app activate the QR code, which is the problem. So then it doesn't quite, it doesn't cut it. But I'm happy that whole kind of QR code idea has stayed with the tech businesses, and we're kind of finally it is part of the way we interact.
It took a world pandemic to disrupt. So I wanted to talk to you about your processes, because I work within the innovation world because I love it. And it's a huge challenge, because you're working with perspectives that don't really understand the full vision. But that's why I like it, because when you do find that right client, that right business that is bought into the idea that you put in front of them, is investing in it, that values this opportunity, and you deliver this opportunity and you create this fantastic experience, it's all worthwhile. But just going back to you with regards to your processes, like, what is your approach as a business when you're going out there looking for new business, particularly in the field that you work in?
Yeah, so the key, there's like two things, and it's so I think like coming from like digital marketing and communications background, and I wish someone would have told me this, ages ago, but no one bothered. But I think key is like now with like COVID and all this, it's like now physical meeting is like it's even more valuable than it used to be. So it's become almost like, why on earth would someone take a new business meeting in person? It's like, well, that's when you're pretty far down the line of being able to get the job. So I think like meetings, that's really interesting. Is like if engaging people seeing who you are, being able to kind of look through the veil of bullshit, and being able to gauge in person that, okay, this is a real person, there is a story there, they have examples of work and they have ideas, and it could be interesting. Like, I'm learning new things here, and delivering that in person, I think it's kind of the that's going to be like, those opportunities are now even more important, I think, because everyone's trying to kind of hammer down with like, LinkedIn messages or whatever sales pitches you're getting online. So that's one thing, I think. The second thing is kind of find the right people in the organization, because it's almost sometimes, and by experience you learn, but what I've learned is that if you have a small organization you're targeting, so the kind of companies, so I'm not going after like Nike or Coca-Cola or businesses like that for obvious reasons, because I'm a small operator. I work with small to medium-sized businesses in the music space with big artist brands, but big artist brands are still medium-sized businesses in terms of how the global economy works.
Yeah.
And then the thing is like you have to find usually the main decision maker who looks at budgeting, and that goes for smaller organizations. For slightly bigger organizations, then you probably have two stakeholders, which is that you need to get in there somehow first, but then you need to find the person who is the CEO usually, and then their counterpart when it comes to the practical delivery of what you're selling. So communications or a website project or whatever it is. So I don't personally find that when you attracting any interest with organizations, like if I'm not tapping into the person who is ambitious at solving big problems for the organization, you necessarily get such good results, because if I'm going after, let's say it's a CMO, or let's say it's head of digital or someone like that, they would look at me as someone who's kind of partly operating in their remit, delivering similar things. So that's one of the, so you have to have the like someone put their kind of arm around you and say like, we would really like to discuss with you about this, like, very seriously. And then you get to that situation, and then through good dialogue and being able to talk through, whether it's like chatbots or lead gen or SEO or websites or social media marketing or LinkedIn advertising or anything at all that's relevant in the kind of like 360 of digital communications, then I think then you can kind of, you can level with people, and then you've got the CEO or the decision maker who's shown an interest, and then you have the people who have to deliver those different parts, and they gain confidence that, well, this guy can actually talk about the detail, but also the bigger picture. And that's the approach with the people. Then the kind of companies I target, I target mainly like companies who have innovations. So might be a software innovation or then an engineering innovation, and their turnover is 10 million plus. So 10 million to, let's say, 100 million first of all, and then like basically growing companies who have something good to sell, and that's unique, and that's where you're already in a pretty good spot at then helping them out, because if the product is good, then you just have to do your job and to find the people who are after this type of thing. So it's kind of but it's very difficult. Like, let's say you have let's say that there's a Swedish let's say a Norwegian company who sell woolly hats, and they want to like become a woolly hat brand in the world, like a big, well-known woolly hat brand, and that's really tough because woolly hats have there is no innovation in a woolly hat that can be, that could be something that hasn't been done before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, it's the same for us. Whenever we're working with a business, it's for us, we always try to drill down what their narrative is and what they're trying to express using, innovation or new technology or even digital. And sometimes some of the businesses that come to us, they have a real strong heritage of narrative, but that's not the kind of focus, because they're coming to us purely because they want a new innovative idea. And a lot of the time it's about what we have to do is kind of put a mirror on them, so they actually look at how they are innovating their audience with their product, and then taking that story and then helping them to kind of express that message using holograms or augmented reality or whatever. You're originally from Finland, and I know you as a business, you actually do a lot of work within the Nordics.
Yeah, well, I think the Nordic markets are all different. So that's one of the kind of key things. Like if you're not from one of these countries, or if you haven't lived there, you kind of bundle them to the same thing. And, you might think like, well, Stockholm's the capital of the Nordic countries, which is one country or something, but they're actually very different. So, and there's all of these countries, they have a different tradition of doing international business. And that tradition is actually very important to defining how the markets are different. So, the Swedes, Norwegian, and all of the Nordic countries apart from Finland were very much like exporting. It was the Vikings, in the whatever after year 1000, starting to go abroad and doing stuff, and being always of the mind of going out. And it's a bit similar as the UK. It's like there is the idea that you always have to be going out to look for opportunities. So that's very important kind of characteristic, is that Sweden and the Swedish people, like they're natural born marketeers, and they've always taken their ideas like international and consumer ideas too. So it's very much like B2B or B2C. It's very kind of it's interesting because like Finland's very much a B2B market. So it's very much about engineering innovations, and it's about lots of technologies that were hugely important in, for example, like developing the mobile phone businesses. And so there's like, it really depends on the markets what your approach should be. for example, if I take Sweden, I don't really even go after Swedish companies so much because they have this kind of a 100-year tradition of kind of marketing, and they've always been successful internationally. And you can see this in, like, you know, you have Swedish movie stars, artists, producers. You find Swedes everywhere. So it's kind of like that's pretty tough competition, I would say, if you're kind of coming out from the UK and you want to get a client. Yeah. Unless you find a B2B business, and then you know that you can do, with a smaller budget, you can do a better job than perhaps your Swedish competitors. Yeah. So then, Norway is it's very different market again, because they have less, their economy is more based on, I would say that, it's oil industries is a big thing, a huge thing. They're very cash rich as a country. So they have, I can't remember what it was, but like 20 times their yearly like expenditure as a country in the bank or something like this. So they're very cash rich. They're it's oil, it's finance, it's things like this. There's less consumer brands coming from Norway. Denmark, as an example, is more akin to Sweden. So they've got really, really cool consumer brands. And Denmark is actually, I think, the most European country and culture out of the Nordic market. So it's Danish people are they're very outgoing, they're fun, they're vocal, they're expressive, more expressive at least, like, let's say the Finns, and they have good consumer brands in fashion, jewelry, so they do a good job with the consumer space. So back to your question, if I'm kind of trying to remember what I'm trying to kind of say here is, it really depends on the market, and it depends a bit, like, let's say you focus on B2B or B2C. I think you have to be kind of clear on that strategy first. Like, what does your company do? What can they offer these businesses? Yeah. And then if it's B2B more, then you have to go and study how do the countries kind of, support smaller businesses in terms of exporting their products. So that's a big thing in many Nordic countries. The government support is quite big. So often, if you're doing an international project, you have to be tapping into that funding, not necessarily directly, but perhaps indirectly. So your client is kind of using the right tools in their market to fund the project. So for example, for me, quite a few projects that I do are partially funded by the governments, and that's a tool that these markets have for the small to medium-sized businesses. Of course, those similar things as support mechanisms exist in any market, but they work a bit differently in the context of the Nordic countries. Right. Yeah. If you're looking at like consumer space, then I think it's just like either trying to find the kind of the incumbent or like growing small good consumer brands, or then really going for it and trying to find a consumer brand who are not doing things well, but there's an opportunity. And I would suggest that the opportunity would be the whole kind of international market, first of all. So, and but like one good example, for example, if you think about this, is Fjällräven. Yeah, well, the backpacks, like the East London Square backpacks with the round logo of the fox. Okay. Yeah, you know this. Yeah. Well, it's the trendy backpack that's been mega popular in especially in the UK, like hipster crowds for the last 10 years. Like the square one? Yeah, so basically that's a really good example of the kind of a Nordic brand that like these type of companies are out there. Like they've been doing this for, it's an old company, but this same product has been, on the market nearly unchanged for the last 60 years. And they've really nailed the kind of digital communications side. The thing is, like, they've done it really well. There's like companies like IKEA. IKEA does really good digital marketing and communications. Yeah. But finding like the type of brands like Fjällräven, who have an ambition to go abroad, I think that those are really good ones, because you find very good consumer products, you find very good like household products, which then need, that their stories need to be told. So yeah, I don't know if that's useful, but
no, totally useful. Yeah.
It's so kind of wrapping up. It's like, it's really like, is this B2B or B2C? And then like, how do I do my research considering the market differences, but also that, there are different support mechanisms in these markets that allow, international sales and expansion. And as a rule of thumb, I'd say like dial down on the kind of the sales and be like a present practical vision. And that's like that appeals more to the Nordic markets. So yeah.
Awesome. We've spoken about the Nordic market. Tell us about some of the clients that you're working with today that you're allowed to talk about.
Well, so I am allowed to talk about, I'm working with, Genelec.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're a client. That's a really exciting project. A brand new project though, but so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking at more the kind of the consumer side there. That's very exciting. Then Puustelli, that's the biggest kitchen brand in Finland. So that's an interesting. It's a bit like Harvey Jones of Finland, if you like. So that's really exciting. I'm also looking at, well, I'm not going to mention that because I just, probably not get it. But there's one hockey brand that's kind of being confirmed unofficially. So that's going to be interesting. But that's also like a combination of B2B tech product and then hockey products. So that's going to be exciting. I'm also working with, in the kind of more B2B engineering space, I'm working with a company called Distance, who do an Internet of Things, like combination of like basically understanding rotating machines in factories and how like vibration, how they can detect vibration, oil qualities, pressure, things like this. And then how to submit that information to the cloud, and then kind of basically digitize a factory, and it's a bit like this kind of intelligent factory approach. So how does if your job is to run 100 water pumping stations in the UK, how do you make sure that before something breaks in your the supply chain, if you like, how do you address those problems before they become a problem? So that's their product. So that's pretty interesting, and it's very much like an engineering innovation type project and a B2B project.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's a few examples.
Just with regards to that, it sounds like that the space that you're in at the moment is very buoyant and exciting.
What's really interesting now to me, and this is what I've been targeting for the last 3 years, is there's come a time where, like, you had let's say you had an engineering innovation, and let's say like you make the best antennas to mobile phones for like a GSM signal to travel or something, or like 5G, the best kind of antenna you need in a mobile for a 5G phone. 10 years ago, it was really like what you needed was a website, and that's it. So if you were selling, you just needed one thing that you could show to someone and say, yes, we are serious. And then hopefully, you've got a website that looks actually expensive, because, if you're going to be trying to sell the best in class products, you have to, look good anyway. So, but then today it's like that whole kind of paradigm of, okay, so if I am selling the best 5G antennas for mobile phones in the world, what are the different things that I can do to get my product in front of the decision makers, not just in the kind of 5 biggest phone manufacturers, but also anyone else who could be relevant. So that's really exciting, I think. And that challenge is much more intellectual challenge than how do I sell more Fjällräven backpacks in East London?
Yeah.
Pretty, yeah. It's like, it's about like groups, interests, different positions, really understanding how a market works. What's your message? You usually have to speak more native language. It's more, that's where it's kind of going. It's like as the B2B space becomes mature, that's what's really exciting, I think, for digital communications.
Absolutely brilliant. We've talked a lot about, your experience and what you're currently doing, but I just wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit just before we go into the outro and just focus on a bit of your history. So you were at Atlantic Records for how long?
I was there for 4.5 plus a year of consulting, or half a year of consulting. Awesome. I can't remember but kind of 5 years-ish, I think.
Yeah, because we met when I was at Music Week, just before the recession. Like, we used to do lots of digital features, and I remember talking to you about it a few times. Yeah. Do you miss it?
One thing I do miss is I think I miss being with people, a larger group of people. So when you're running a smaller company and you're meeting, the people who you meet are like, your clients, your co-workers, but, you're not working with a big team. What I do miss is like a gang mentality, like that sort of you're part of the gang sort of thing. So that's what Atlantic Records was, and that's how the record companies are anyway. So whether the people they get on or not, it's a different thing, but it's still a gang. So that's quite. I think like the whole lockdown, 3-month lockdown, working a lot from home. That's not like it's a bit boring in terms of people. So I think I've become more social in recent months.
I get that vibe as well. I mean, Tiger Heart, there's only 2 of us that are in the office when we are in the office. As liberating as it is to run your own business, sometimes you do miss that kind of camaraderie of having a big team around you just to kind of bounce off. So I totally get that. And I think that's just kind of the nature of running your own small business.
Yeah, and I also think like for even companies where you employ 50 people, I think the owner would still be like the CEO or the owner would still, you have a more solitary role anyway, because if you're the CEO, you're responsible of everyone. But it's not like but like at that level where I was at Atlantic, so a coordinator, manager, consultant, so the all of that was like it was a lot of fun. Like the people were really good. Like they hired nice people, so they had a very good atmosphere. Like a really nice group of people. So that's something that it doesn't like happen in your when you ride to the sunset with your when you take on the world alone, that sort of thing.
I'm sure the music industry is still a lot of fun now, but I remember that time. I really enjoyed my time working within that circle of the music industry, not just within the UK, London particularly, but also in the States and like all over Europe. It was just, there was a lot of cool things happening. And, you worked with some fantastic artists over that period. You're a music native originally, and you said you were in bands, and that's what kind of got you into the music industry. Tell us about your music background.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess like I couldn't really say like I was in like active bands touring or things like that, but I played throughout. I studied classical violin, then I studied
Wow.
jazz rock guitar for 10 years or something, and I did like degrees and studied like classical music history, jazz rock music history, and like I just learned so much from different perspectives. So I kind of and that was the passion then. So
You played guitar as a
yeah.
musician. You were in a band as a guitarist.
Well, I was playing with like groups when I was in school, so they were like different groups for doing a degree or whatnot. But yeah, for me, yeah, so I always played guitar in those kind of band circumstances,
Awesome.
and yeah, and that's a good point about musicians is that it will take a long time. Like that whole kind of AI's got nothing on music. So that's really I really like that. So like the whole kind of but when you have like a jazz quartet improvising live at Ronnie Scott's, it's like an AI algorithm, whatever someone's doing somewhere. Like it's like it's million. It's like the human band is miles ahead. So
Yeah.
or
Well,
a million miles ahead. So.
absolutely. I mean, it's a completely different landscape for the digital era. And that's the beauty of being an artist or being exposed to art. Like I came from the music sector before I went into working in digital and tech. And I find actually music is a great way to kind of connect with people. So I'm not going to tell you his name, but he's one of the most important fashion designers in the world, works for probably the most important Italian fashion brand in the world. And when I first met him to present him some technology, his entourage kind of gave off this vibe, a quite a standoffish kind of vibe. But when he and I were together, one-to-one, we started talking about music, and he was like, who's your favorite band? And I was like, I love Metallica. And he was like, I fucking love Metallica, and that was our connection,
Yeah.
which allowed us to do business. So music to me has kind of been one of the most important aspects of my career because it's allowed me to kind of communicate with people.
Yeah, the understanding like creativity like that, and I think the ambition and the type of a brain who ends up doing a creative job, or whether it's a fashion designer or whether it's an artist, or a musician. I think there's similarities there, and there's really that like appreciating human creativity, and with artists I always admired the courage that they had to take the leap for like genuinely believing in something so abstract as I'm going to make the ends meet by, with my own music, and it's going to support me and, pay my bills. It's like and they're very brave people, artists who, in most cases, most successful artists are very brave, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, so I admire that, and I think that experience of genuinely having been working with artists and artists who were very, very successful, it kind of allows you to look at it from that other perspective, which I would say that it's not like working in a mobile games company or like gamification. So how do we keep these players engaged? We give them a virtual diamond coin or something, and they feel better about themselves, or like social media, like ways to engage, keep users engaged. It's like there's something to be said about like genuine abstract human expression, and that's an ambition, like crazy ambition, and that's really cool, and that's still really cool. And working with artists, like you don't really get that in the kind of more traditional business world.
Absolutely. On that note, Nikke, I think we're going to close the session. It's been absolutely awesome talking to you. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to email me at nikke@saari.co.uk. That's nikke@saari.co.uk. And that's me. So I pick up all the emails there. And then, I think that's the best way probably. Please get in touch on LinkedIn. And then I'm building our LinkedIn page group as well. So company, saari.co.uk on LinkedIn, and then my personal handle. So those are the ones. Yeah.
No worries. Nikke, again, thank you so much for your time. It's really good to reconnect with you. I'm sure we'll do some more work together in the future. Those of you listening, I hope you're enjoying what you're hearing. If you liked what you heard, please do share this using the hashtag TigerHeartChats, all one word. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, be good.